So why are you here today?
Well, I'm here today because of some things that happened in my first year of college back when I was at Valdosta State. I basically became a bit of a stoner, and while I'm not very proud to admit that, that wasn't necessarily the problem in itself, is that we ended up smoking something that was laced. And this ended up creating a terrible night where I was hallucinating. It was just bad all around, and it's basically created a situation where even to this day, I sometimes, don't feel very good and feel the lasting effects even all these years later.
So you're tired of feeling bothered by these issues.
I am. I just want to be through with it and not have to worry about them coming back.
What were some of the symptoms from this?
So basically what my symptoms were, it was, I guess, kind of akin to a panic attack. Basically, I just had these rush of negative emotions that would take me over for an unspecified period of time.
So you felt terrified of how much these panic attacks affected you.
Yes, I did. It wasn't something that I was prepared for, well at all.
So how did they affect you?
So basically the way it would work, it would be like I would wake up, I would just be mortified, terrified of what was to come throughout the day, because I knew I'd eventually have a panic attack. And then the panic attack would hit, and even though they weren't incredibly long, sometimes as short as just 10 or 15 minutes, just the raw emotions that I'd have then would leave me basically emotionally dead for the rest of the day. And it just became this vicious cycle where every single day it was the same thing: wake up, freak out, have the panic attack, and then go to sleep just emotionally wounded.
So you felt confused about the intensity of these attacks. What was the height of this?
So the height of the attacks were, I was with my family up in Maryland, and we're very big football fans. And it was a rivalry game, and it was a fantastic game. It even went to overtime, and I was just sitting there the entire time, I was scared that I was going to somehow, as crazy as it sounds, like break some sort of veil of unreality if I said something to anyone about it. Like if I mentioned it, like the entire world would just collapse. It had gotten to that point where I was really wondering if I was going to go insane as I sat there doing what I should have enjoyed.
So you felt lost because you couldn't enjoy anything because of your panic.
Yes, things that I normally enjoyed couldn't even help me to get me through these processes.
So what was causing these attacks?
So I think obviously the bad night that I had was very much a catalyst. It basically just kind of opened the door for things that I guess my subconscious had been feeling for quite a while. Among them was I became very suspicious of whether or not my friends either liked me or were actually my friends. I had a very negative image of my body image, and as well as just my physical health in general. And of course, it upset my mental health with how different these feelings were to anything I had experienced.
So you questioned things you had never questioned before.
Right, I'd never really had a reason to question them before. It was just, they're your friends. You look like what you look like because of what you did and didn't do. It wasn't something that I ever thought to question, but yes, I began to after.
As you mentioned your friendships, why did they cause you so much stress, and how did they impact you?
Well, I think the reason that they ended up causing me stress was because I basically just had a different experience from high school and college, and I just wasn't ready I basically just became so much more cynical towards my friends. I just didn't know whether or not they actually liked me or not.
So you became more cynical with wondering whether your friends were your friends. When did this come about, and how did it?
Well, it became a problem in high school, or it became a problem because of my experiences in high school. Because I played sports, I talked with just about anybody, I was friends with just about anybody, I had a bunch of different hobbies, so I had a bunch of people that I considered to be friends. But because when I moved to college, I didn't know anybody, I was in college hours away from where I originally went to high school. It left me in a situation where I was going through school knowing almost nobody and not having those safety blankets that I was used to having in my friends when I was in school. So I think that's what really got to me, was just going from having a bunch of friends that I could trust to having almost just a few friends that I didn't know if I could trust.
So you struggled to cope with the difference between the two of college and high school.
Yeah, I that goes for more than just friendship, but yeah, that definitely played a massive role.
So earlier you had mentioned physical health. How did this affect you physically?
Well, in terms of like what actually happened in terms of my physical health, I struggled to eat because I never really found a time I felt like it, because I was just so worried about what was going to happen. So I would just end up freaking out for long periods of time and just really end up struggling. And then in terms of how I saw myself physically, I've always been a stocky kind of guy. So, I'm muscular, but I also, have a little fat I could lose. And it basically, I flip-flopped from considering myself that a muscular guy with a little bit of extra baggage to someone who was fat that just tried to work out to get over the fact that they were fat. And I think that was the biggest change in terms of my physical image.
So your thoughts became a bit more negative towards yourself rather than positive.
Yeah, it definitely changed how I perceived myself, because I'd always been a little bit, I'd always been confident in myself before this.
So what were some other aspects that it affected your health?
So the biggest thing is obviously going to be my mental health. I had always been someone who was pretty happy-go-lucky, kind of like, go with the flow kind of person. So I had never really experienced such a massive upturn in emotions. I had never just had those safety valves just completely released. So I would basically end up in these situations where I had these rushes of emotion that I had no real way of understanding how to cope with. I even thought I was going insane for a little while, just because of just because of how different it was to anything I had ever experienced before.
You felt unprepared for the mental amount of this emotion.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it, because like I said, it wasn't anything to that point that I had any practice with. Maybe if I had, it would have hit me a lot less hard than it ultimately did. But yes, when it did hit, I had no real defenses towards it.
So how did they shift the way your thought process worked?
Well, it basically shifted my thought process overall from positivity overall to maybe not negativity, but more cynicism. I definitely became a lot less positive. I stopped thinking so much positively and questioned myself and others a lot more than I had before this point.
So you lost your positivity towards the world.
Yeah, pretty much everything didn't really escape from it. Almost everything became a little bit darker after those times.
Do these still continue to affect you every day?
It doesn't affect me every day. I managed to get myself into a better headspace. The thing is, I'm worried constantly because there are still times when things get rough where I do begin to get concerned, that I start to feel the edges of a panic attack creeping. So I want to get over this so that I can never have to worry about being in that same place again.
So you feel scared to fall back into your old habits?
Yes, I cannot afford at this point in my life to have another 6 months where I lose just everything.
What helps you to cope with these?
Well, I want to say the biggest thing that probably helped me cope was my family. They are definitely the ones that saved me through this whole ordeal.
So your family managed to pull you through.
Right. They managed to succeed where even my friends failed.
So how did your family help you succeed with this?
Well, I remember what happened. It was actually directly after my worst moment where I was just freaking out. I didn't know what was happening. We were about to drive back home from Maryland, and I basically broke down in the car, and I was like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm losing myself here, guys. And they talked me through it, and they basically explained, like, son, you're going through a panic attack. And once I finally had a name, it kind of broke some of the power it had over me, because then I was able to be like, okay, there is a way to battle this. There is a way to get ahead on it. So, and then obviously they were very supportive throughout the process, through my recovery. So it's all thanks to my family that I managed to pull through as well as I did.
So you felt relieved that your family was able to help you and kind of take some of it away.
Yeah, well, like I said, even my friends, which I valued so highly in high school, weren't able to really help me get through it. It was almost completely on what my family was capable of doing. So yes, that would be accurate.
Well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, well, thank you for listening.